Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Macstaff Live with myself, Martin Crowson. They say that everybody's got a book inside of them, so why do so few people write them? Well, today I'm joined by two men who have both got over that line and become authors over the last couple of years. Macstaff MD Anthony McCormack has written Job Search, Job Done. And our very special guest today, we're delighted to have on Steve Guest, has just released his third book called The Guest List. So first of all, Ant, welcome and thanks for popping on today. And I'll let you do a proper intro to Steve. Over to you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Martin. Hi to everybody. And yeah, this is a great favour. I'm really pleased to have Steve on. Thanks for this. He's the MD of Steve Guest Consulting Services, which is a highly respected construction recruitment company in the Midlands, punches above its weight. You probably know him for the Guest List podcast, which is really successful as well. He's an REC trainer, like doing some kind of a 12-week masterclass, I think it is. And pertinent to today, obviously, the author of, well, it's the trilogy now, isn't it? We got Top Biller first, like the personal brand story, and the one we're going to come on to. So thanks for joining us, Steve.
Thank you. What a welcome.
Yeah, we're about finished really now, welcome. Steve, after that intro. It's not much time
I'll see you later.
I'm fangirling.
Yeah.
Folks, before we get into it today, you're very welcome to join us here on LinkedIn or YouTube today. And if you watch on YouTube, please subscribe to catch up with everything we're going to be doing in the show here on Macstaff Live. Let's get going. Steve, just you first. Thanks so much for joining us today. Let's just knock back to that point I just mentioned, that everybody's got a book within them, supposedly. How do so many people, take that with them into retirement and think, oh, I wish that's something I'd done? What's holding us back?
Do you know what? I think it's hard. It's hard to write a book, and I think it takes a lot of willpower. It takes motivation. It takes setting that deadline and the ability to get up every day and perhaps write a little bit more, write a new chapter, or answer those budding questions. But I think it's just getting up and doing it. I think that's the biggest problem. It's having the motivation to get it done. Maybe having a reason why you're writing it in the first place. A lot of us have things like imposter syndrome, or you'll start asking questions. Well, what value can I offer? Why would anyone want to read my story? Why would anyone care about what I've got to say? And I went through all of those questions. I think it's getting over them to think, you know what, I'm just going to do it anyway. There's far more hurdles perhaps at the start than there is perhaps positives for writing it.
And how tough was that, getting over that first hurdle for your first book, Steve? Was there a eureka moment, or was it just bloody mindedness to get yourself there?
I think at the time I was looking at getting into property investing, so I was spending a lot of time with successful entrepreneurial type people, and a lot of the seminars I was going to were saying the same thing. You need to write a book. You need online assets. You need to have ways of earning money while you're asleep, and all these conversations. And a lot of them had wrote books. I always share this story. I went to one seminar and there was about 70, 80 people in the room. And the guy leading the seminar said, how many in the room have wrote a book? There's about 8 or 9 hands go up. And he said, keep your hands up if you've sold more than 50 copies. And all the hands went down. And I was just about thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna write my book. And I was sat there thinking, 50 books. That's the aim, to write a book, spend hundreds of hours writing stuff to not sell 50 copies. And I kind of had a word with myself then and thought, well, do you know what? If I can sell 51, I'm the best person in that room. So let's just get back on it. And that was the first kind of rung on the ladder. But I think it's like anything in life, isn't it? Your brain, it's that chimp paradox. Your brain thinks of reasons to protect itself and protect you from, I don't know, shame or embarrassment, or having people kind of pull you down a peg or two. And I suppose you just need to get to the point where you ignore it and just think, I'm just going to do it anyway because it's something I need to prove to myself.
Yeah.
I think when I first started to think about writing a book, I was going to write a book on my property journey, because at that point I hadn't started and I was going to document everything. And I had to kind of change my sense of direction and think, okay, perhaps property is not the way. Let's write something about recruitment. And my journey within recruitment was very much being told no from the start. You're never going to make it. You're not the right character. You're not confident enough. You don't have that sales ability to become a recruitment consultant. You would never be You'd never be successful. And at that time, I was, what was I, 9 or 10 years in? And I'd proven all the doubters wrong by that point. So I thought, well, why not document that story and perhaps do it in a way that can perhaps empower perhaps the quieter, conservative type recruiter.
Yeah, interesting. And do any of Steve's answers resonate with you before you got to pen job search, job done?
Yeah, all of the above. Yeah, I concur with everything Steve said, and sometimes it does come. It is difficult and a mental barrier, but sometimes you have to, there's nothing to it but to do it, sort of thing, isn't there? It's like, when's your one day gonna become day one? And I was an accidental author in a way, in that I'd thought, let's tee up 12 blogs, for next year, and I'd done them quite in depth, like more like white paper type level, and thought afterwards, like, these are starting to look like chapters. So, what do I have to do to get it out there? And I spoke, and this is another barrier for people, I think, that they don't know what the process is like. So I started speaking to a couple of authors that I did know, and they said, well, best way obviously is to get paid for like a like lucrative book deal, like, but you might be waiting a long time, okay, that's not going to happen. Or you do vanity publishing, where you pay a publisher a whole bunch of money to for the privilege of them publishing your book. But there's a third way as well, apparently, and I did KDP Amazon, which is almost like a paint by numbers like thing, whereas you upload the manuscript and get the pictures there, and you can do it yourself. You're not beholden unto anybody, and that's how I kind of got mine over the line, so to speak.
Steve, what was your process like? We just spoke about ants there, but how did that actually, from the inspiration, the ideas you've spoken about, how did you get it over the line?
I think initially, I think I'd wrote about 20,000, 25,000 words, and I got writer's block. I put it on hold for about 6 months, and it got to Christmas, and I suppose I was annoyed with myself that I'd stopped, and I'd just lost that momentum. And I found a lady that specialises in helping you self-publish your book. So I contacted her and said, right, I need to set a deadline and just get this over the line. I think we set a deadline for June, July of the following year.
Okay.
And then I set about getting up every morning. I was in the office for 5:30 in the morning, and I gave myself an hour and a half to write something, or at least answer a question that I thought would offer value back. And do it within a certain time period that got it over the line. I was accountable to the self-published person. I also got another lady involved, which she's I call her my chief editor. She was an editor stroke ghostwriter. So I would write chapters or write the content, and then she would make it read better, or challenge me in certain aspects. So if I'd said something that perhaps didn't make sense to someone outside of recruitment, we could tailor it so that actually it made more sense to everybody, and it wasn't just recruiter specific.
Is it fair to say, Steve, if you hadn't gone down that route of getting into the office for 5:30 to set that aside, this may never have happened?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, at the time, I was managing 19 staff across Manchester and Birmingham. I was up and down the motorway probably 2 or 3 times a week, while still billing as a recruiter, and doing all the reporting that goes with that to report back into a head office that was based in Watford. I had to set a time that I could, I suppose, have pure concentration outside of a time where there wasn't any distractions from recruiters or anyone that I was perhaps accountable to or for.
Yeah.
So it's tough, and you have to. I had to sit there perhaps over that festive period and think, okay, how am I going to get this done? Where am I going to find the time? And that's what I had to do. That was the downside of getting the first book published. But actually, it was really good because it gave you clarity. Because it was just me in the office, and like the night before, I would sit there and think, okay, what questions have I been asked today? What were the biggest issues or hurdles that perhaps some of the recruiters were facing or the market was showing me, I could then put into text, create a chapter, or almost put the questions together that then created the chapter. So I reckon the whole process to get Top Biller done was about 18 months from start to finish.
Okay. And out of interest,
a 4 to 6 month break.
Yeah. And out of interest, did you follow the same process for the personal brand story and the guest list now? That I need to put some time aside to make sure this happens.
Yeah. It's exactly that. And what I do is I work on a 12-month scale and effectively try and work to about 12 chapters. So it gives me a month per chapter. And then what I'll do as I move, so I could be driving in the car or having a conversation, I suddenly think of something that would be of value. I talk into my phone or drop a quick message to say this needs to be a question or a chapter, and then you consistently adding to it. Top Biller taught me a lot in terms of process and how to put, I suppose, content and books together. And what it's enabled me to do is, because the network has grown from that first book, is actually go out to the network and say, what would you like to see, or what topics would you like to be covered? So in essence, the market what it needs for perhaps the next book.
Yeah, interesting. And what was your biggest challenge when you were going through your author writing process?
Well, I'd done a lot of the front end anyway, in terms of that. I think that's normally most people's biggest challenge, is to kind of get it all out there. It's like almost like vomiting in that bucket, isn't it, until you've got it all out there. But I'd already got the structure. So when I kind of tapped my author friend on the shoulder and said, can you help me, with publishing a book? She's kind of palming me off really and saying, look, just start writing first. That's the kind of the major battle in a way. But I'd kind of done that part. So then it was a niggly kind of stuff of getting the right formatting and just saying like, oh, what about the front matter? Like, what are you even talking about? But it does have to have, contents page acknowledgements, and you need your IBAN number, I think it is, don't you? And it was just a lot of kind of being detail oriented to actually kind of put all the the I's dotted and T's crossed. The marketing the book thing is then quite a challenge, in that book's not going to sell itself, unfortunately. So that's still a work in progress, really, because people will buy it one by one for their personal job search, and that's great. But I suppose the dream was to get prisons to issue it to people that are going to be released, or have universities giving them out to people that are graduating, things like that. It's those people that literally need the course charting to the through the treasure map sort of thing, isn't it? But it was a personal accomplishment, though. It was kind of like 3-leveled, I suppose. I wanted to get good information all into one place, because I hadn't seen a leading book about job search. So there was that. There was all the stuff that Steve was talking about in terms of it being a credibility play and passive income and branding information and things like that. But also equally as important to me was just to have that kind of personal accomplishment, and to differentiate myself from everybody who just thinks about it and never does it, sort of thing.
Yeah, Steve Ant talks there about the personal accomplishment and the joy of actually seeing yourself in print. How did that feel for you? And going on from your first book, what makes you proud of the things you've done in those 3 books? I know the third one's only just out, but what can you look back on and think, I'm really proud I've done that, either for your personal accomplishments or for the industry?
Do you know what? I think the whole process, if I'm honest, certainly Top Biller has been really surreal. So I wrote Top Biller really as something to give out almost as part of the merchandise to clients and candidates, and say, look, I'm the recruiter that wrote a book. That was the initial thought process. And it was published November 2019. And 6 months on from it being published, we obviously had COVID. So there was lots of recruiters on furlough. The markets had stopped. People were sat at home not knowing really what to do. They were insecure about what was around the corner. And I think that really helped potentially with a lot of the book sales. And I think I owe a lot in many ways to, I suppose, a open and active market that can go and purchase a book to do something that is job related while not necessarily being allowed to be in the office. Top Biller is currently, and has been for some time, globally the highest reviewed recruitment book in the world. It's sold in 70 plus countries. I think it's about just short of 25,000 copies worldwide. That is amazing. And I'm not saying that with any kind of big-headedness or anything like that. I'm really proud of it, because if I think back, my first target was those 51 copies. And I never in my wildest dreams thought I would get to the point of where it is now. And in some ways, it makes the second book, A Personal Brand Story, like slightly diminished. And I look at that in slight disappointment in some ways, because it's only sold probably about 4,000 copies. But actually 4,000 copies is still amazing.
Yeah.
And when I set on the journey, as I say, I never expected any of it. So I would say that's definitely the biggest accomplishment. And I think the marketing for Top Biller was purely done organically. I paid for a few kind of Facebook ads that did okay. But in terms of actually book sales through Amazon and the like, it's all been done through posts on LinkedIn and people contacting me requesting for the month planner, which I give out as a free gift, which at the start I purely did to offer value. And actually that became probably the greatest marketing tool, because when people were asking for the planner, I was asking, would you mind putting a post out? And actually that then effectively marketed the book for the last 4 years, and still does to this day. So I'm eternally grateful for the network, because they've allowed it to happen by supporting the book in itself.
Yeah, it's often marketing's all about trying to find that one thing that other people can do for you, to do your job for you several times, isn't it? So
it's crazy. Even the lady that helps me with the self-publishing, she helps to publish many books. And she actually contacted me about 12, 18 months after and said, why do you think it worked so well? Because we have lots of published authors that offer free gifts, and none of them have been so effective. And I think a lot of it comes down to perhaps opportunity. I think in my experience, this is my 18th year in recruitment, all recruiters need a good plan, or all of them need a good process, and sometimes struggle to stay organised. So I think it kind of tapped into a really relevant need in the market, which then effectively obviously helped to promote the book. And because I'm process procedural driven as well, I think recruiters naturally kind of work towards buying the book, because they needed to add process and procedure to their daily routines.
Yeah.
And that wasn't necessarily the intent at the start.
Yeah.
And I really personally liked, the Top Biller book as well, and kind of resonating on what you were saying a few minutes ago, in that it kind of was the example of the non-stereotypical recruiter being successful. Like, I think I'm the other like introverted recruiter, and it was like that validation that you can you can succeed in a different style. You don't need to be the loudest or biggest ego guy at the table. You can just quietly like do an excellent job. So thumbs up.
And ironically, when I do podcasts or interviews, the people that kind of invite me on, I've always said, I didn't expect you to be the way that you are, because Top Biller naturally says you're going to be this big ego, loud, gregarious person, and I'm not at all. I'm quiet, unassuming, process procedural, spreadsheet savvy person. I'm the quiet person that sits at the back of the room, and I just follow a process.
It's that straightforward. And what advice would you give, having gone through the process yourself now and got the book out? What would you give to advice to somebody that wants to start it but is just starting today?
Definitely, I suppose if you've got something to say, then say it. And if you've got a book in, you go after it. So I'd definitely give people the encouragement and the permission to start and see how it goes. Like, the first step's always the hardest, kind of cliche, isn't it? And then advice would be to ask for advice as well. Like, if you've got people in your circle, or you can just ask online for people who've perhaps walked through the process already, to see if they can help you out. And I suppose it's a balance of you do want to kind of have a what's the word, like a proofreader, and somebody who can kind of, you know, bat ideas around with, but also you can't kind of listen too much to naysayers if they're going to try and put you off achieving your goal. And then just practically speaking, you know, the self-publishing route is probably the quickest and cheapest way of achieving it, and you know, you never know where it might take you. So put your best foot forward, I think.
Steve, yourself, you've been through the process 3 times. What advice would you give to people, either both practical and emotional, before they start this journey?
I would say the biggest thing is commitment. Commit to it. I would get someone that you're accountable to, whether that's somebody that you're getting to self-publish with you, or maybe to edit or proofread. Get a date in the diary and aim to it, and then come up with a plan that gets you there. What's worked really well for me for all 3 books is to do it in bite-sized chunks. So split them over a period of time and try not to put too much pressure on getting a book out by the end of next week. It is a 12 to 18 month process. The hardest part for me of writing all 3 of those is the proofreading and editing at the end, having to read a book 10 to 15 times and spot the bits where you've missed a T off or you're missing a comma. It's the most frustrating part, because I mean, I must have read the guest list maybe 10 times within a 2-week period. That's hard going, and you kind of just flip over certain sentences because you've read them so many times and missed the obvious. So give yourself time, be accountable, commit to it, and I would say book time in your diary to just get chunks of writing done, even if it's just answering a question that then formulates into a paragraph or a chapter.
Okay. And because you're such a fan of planning and processing, is book 4 scheduled out now in your diary, or are you still in the glow of book 3?
No, top Biller 2 is the next one.
Oh,
so it's been before you start on the property one as well.
It's been 4 years, so I'm certainly in a different place now than when I started writing Top Biller 1. The recruitment market is definitely in a different place. So there's lots of things that we can add in and improve upon in terms of process and the introduction of new areas. So yeah, I've had the discussions. I think chapter 1 is by end of October.
Wow.
That's cool, because it's been a different market this year to a certain extent as well, hasn't it? And I think people who've perhaps joined recruitment in the last, 2-3 years haven't realised they've been riding a wave, like, to a certain extent, and myself included. And now it's like, you need to raise your game to kind of stay in the same place, really.
Yeah, back to business development course.
In the old days, they used to like tape your phone to your hand, didn't you? So you couldn't like put it down and stuff like that.
And again,
yeah, you can sit down once you've like got a job in and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's definitely.
We could go on for a long while, fellas, but we're pushing to the close of our broadcast today. And tell us a little bit about Job Search Job Done before we go.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been out for a little while, obviously, but it's good to talk about it online. It's like a one-stop shop success manual, if you will, for candidates or people who are who want to buy for somebody who wants to do a great job in their job search, really, to get the job done. I'd realised that there's a lot of bad advice around, and that it's a very important subject that people quite often leave to chance in terms of when and how to conduct a job search. And definitely a little investment in the book could have a massive upside in terms of getting the right job with the right company in the right place, and that's major contributor to your quality of life, isn't it? So like Steve would say, like, have a plan. For goodness sake.
Yeah, lovely, thanks. Steve, over to you. Tell us a bit about the guest list,
and
also a charity that's close to your heart as a result of it as well.
So that's the new book. It's a collection of 12 of the most listened to downloaded podcast episodes that we did. It covers property, recruitment, entrepreneurs, wealth, success, money, mindset, NLP. There's so many different subjects of value, but the general theme throughout the book is keeping that right mindset and going out and achieving things. Lots of added bonuses in there. We went back to each of the relevant individuals for each chapter and got a little bit more info and intel that's given it a lot more kind of meat on the bone. All profits are donated to the British Heart Foundation in memory of my dad, who sadly passed away in 2004 from a heart attack. And the idea really for me behind this was this book gives me the ability to give back. The other two perhaps have given me a new platform or a raised profile within my network. And hopefully this book can just offer a little bit back to the British Heart Foundation.
Fantastic. Thanks, Steve. Thanks very much for joining us today. It's really much appreciated and a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. And as ever, thanks very much for your time. We'll put the links to both books in the gubbins below on both channels that we're broadcasting on today. And that just leaves me, Martin Crowson, to say thank you for watching us today here on Macstaff Live. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, where you can find all sorts of information about recruiting, whether you're a client or a candidate, from pretty heavy topics like is capitalism working in the UK and is our workforce planning working in the UK, down to some practical tips as well for job hunting and interviews. That's all on our YouTube channel if you check it out. And more information you can find on the Macstaff website. Otherwise, we shall see you again soon here on Macstaff Live. Thanks once again, and thank you, fellas, again for joining us. All the best and have a good one.
Cheers. See you next time.
Cheers.